Welcome to Migration Minded, the Dynamics 365 web series where we dig into important modernization considerations with Dynamics AX and Dynamics CRM experts to help support your cloud transformation thinking. As always, I'm Tom Wisniewski, a global product marketing manager with Dynamics 365. With me today, I have Nathan Clouse, a 2-year Microsoft MVP. Nathan has spent the last 11 years in the Dynamics AX space. Based out of Detroit, Michigan, Nathan is currently a technical architect for enVista. Today, we are talking about data cleanup, the process of upgrading or migrating to the cloud, and how to make these two things as easy as possible on you. So with that, let's get started. Hey, Nathan, how's it going?
Hey, happy to be here.
So, Nathan, to start, I thought I'd ask, it can be challenging to know what to prioritize when upgrading to the cloud. What are some of your top considerations that customers should be thinking through?
Well, first, I always recommend that my customers be proactive. One of the things that we see a lot is the customers will ignore a lot of little bits and bobs of data that start occurring, and then they wait until it's time to do an upgrade to really address those. And really, when we're talking about upgrading, that's a pre-upgrade activity that end users can just start on now, manage it now. And if they're looking at upgrading, that just makes the upgrade process easier. And if not, there's some other benefits as well. But going along with that, you have to sort of know what to expect when you're looking at trimming your data. You'll need to not just have this be an IT effort, have this be a business effort where you work with the business to determine what areas of the system we can trim excess data from. So you'll have to partner with the business to sort of build a set of rules around, what data you're trimming. And really, you want to make the process as easy as you can to make it repeatable, because this isn't just a do it once and forget it. This is you'll get to a steady state, which will be non-significant effort, and then you'll want to do monthly or quarterly or yearly refreshes on that steady state to keep up with stuff that has changed over time.
And so what would you recommend as, say, a first step or steps in this upgrade process?
Really, just an overall data cleanup. Most likely, what I see on the partner side is that companies aren't doing this currently. It's something that should be as part of your just normal care and feeding of your AX 2009 or AX 2012 system. And the reason why we should be doing this already is it improves overall stability and performance of the system in general. But when you're looking at upgrading, it just reduces your data footprint for stuff that has to be upgraded. Typically, there's a lot of clutter that AX will make regarding postings or journals. Just a lot of good information at the time, but over time, it loses its value because you don't necessarily need to know who posted a journal 3 years ago. You've got the voucher, and everything's moved on since. That clutter doesn't disappear when you migrate. It gets migrated along with. But when you do that, you sort of just bring all your data with, and if you don't need it, you're bringing a lot of extra stuff with that you don't necessarily need. And it's really better to deal with that sooner, like in AX 2009 or 2012, rather than later in F&O. And Microsoft has a lot of out-of-the-box tools in 2009, as well as there's even more in 2012 to help support that activity.
Yeah, so that makes it pretty clear how data can be built up quickly within an organization. Why do you think it's important for a business to clean up their data even before upgrading or migrating to the cloud?
Well, I guess there's a few key sort of benefits. It helps you organize your data beforehand. And by that, I mean, when you partner IT with the business, you know exactly what data you'll need to have, what is critical data, what is not critical data. So you have a good partnership between IT and the business for just data stewardship, if you will. It also avoids upgrading data that isn't necessary. So as a for instance, just as an example, I had a client that had nearly 20 gigabytes worth of posting information that they didn't want to keep. And they didn't clean it out before they upgraded, and that was 20 gigabytes of stuff that got upgraded. And that's neither good nor bad. It's just there's no point in doing extra work for the sake of doing extra work. So this, when you do this before you upgrade, or even when you start thinking about upgrading, cleans up a lot of space and allows your company to take stock of what data they have, where it is, what's valuable, what's critical, and that helps frame up the data conversation when we get to F&O. Next, overall, there's a cost benefit to cleaning up your data. That is the benefit you'll see in 2012 is, it's just less data to maintain. So if you've got stuff on lease, it's just less data overall. But when you get to F&O, there is just a benefit to keeping the amount of your data in your database low for performance reasons, and there are I don't want to say data caps. There are data plans related to your licensing inside F&O, and you want to make sure you keep under those, so then you're not billed extra. Currently, that's not an issue, but just something to keep in mind. When you have less data, the process goes faster. Typically, you're engaged with a partner, and anything that goes faster costs less money. So there's no point in upgrading a bunch of data we don't need and incurring that cost when it's something that we can live without, or we can throw in a data lake or a data warehouse somewhere. Also, Microsoft provides you the tools to do a lot of this data cleanup now. So there's no real reason, there's no barrier to entry. Those tools are already there. They are in your AX 2012 and 2009 instances already. So there's no reason, not to learn what they do and go ahead and use them. Each tool has a very specific use. They're relatively easy to find. And if you really want to go look at those right now, like in General Ledger, under periodic, there will be a cleanup section, and you'll have similar tools areas and all the other major modules for AX.
Yeah, that's great. So could you walk us through sort of a typical cleanup and or migration, what a typical cleanup and or migration process would look like for an organization?
Sure. So high level, you'll want to record, current state. What's the current volume of your data in terms of how much space is currently being used? You also want to consider inside of the database, not just, I have a 1 terabyte database, but how the data is distributed across those tables inside your database. So there's a few different ways to do this, but capture, in aggregate database size, then specifics, and then also capture. There's a report inside AX and in 2009, AX 2012 and 2009 to represent the size of a relative company. So you can start running those to see which company is your biggest company in terms of data volume, and start focusing there. You have different legal entities that are going to present with different data challenges. So like, for instance, let's say your AX 2012 instance has one financial legal entity and one entity that does all of your buy, make, sell operations. Those are going to represent themselves differently when looking at a database cleanup. So you just want to be aware of that. And some tools are appropriate for some organizations and some not. You just need to know your data. Overall, I mentioned this before. We talked about data stewardship, just getting a really good handle on where your data are, what distribution your data looks like inside your companies, and then just start running the tools for each company, for each area, and recording the after state. Just as an example, I had back to my original client, they were able to shave off 20 gigabytes of data from related to purchase order postings just by running out of the box tools. And 20 gigabytes may not sound like much, but there are some instances of AX out there that represents the entire size of their database. So you've got to just keep in mind, size of your database, distribution of your data, distribution of your companies, and then how long those companies have been around, what you've been doing in them, and just record before and after each company for what tool it is that you're using.
And so it sounds like proactive cleanup is certainly the way to go, even if you don't have an upgrade on the horizon. What are some of the typical challenges that you've seen across customer engagements, and how can customers confront them?
Well, typically what we see is something that has just always worked and has been ignored or forgotten. Those little background processes that are recording, that they did something every day or hour or every minute, that just give a positive affirmation that, yep, I ran my workflow process. Those have been running since AX has been set up, and they've sort of been forgotten about. So that can turn sort of tiny little drops into an ocean of data that you have to deal with. And these are just log postings. So, we see the stuff that is not, I guess I'd say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. These aren't squeaky wheels. These are processes that have always worked, but because they've always worked, no one's gone back to check and see, what kind of mess they may be making just because they work exactly as they're supposed to, but they're logging all the stuff they're doing. Next, when we talk about solutions to those, again, Microsoft has a lot of the tools available for IT. IT needs to partner with the business to go over potentially years worth of posting data to see what's valuable and what isn't, what auditors might need to see, what auditors, don't necessarily care about, and start using some of the tools to clean out just miscellaneous posting data for stuff that is no longer of value to the business. So for instance, Microsoft has a tool to help you clean out posted ledger journals. Your auditors may want you to keep 2 years worth of journals, but this tool can help you get rid of anything older than 2 years. And that can help free up, several gigabytes worth of stuff. It also speeds up overall performance because users don't have to dig through, years of posted journals. And there's similar tools available for sales order and purchase order postings, as well as production orders and all the production journals associated with production orders. And that also ties into some inventory and warehousing tools as well.
Yeah, so that should certainly resonate with a lot of organizations, and it's good to know that there are tools out there that can definitely help. Finally, do you have any advice for organizations that are thinking about migrating or might not know where to start in the process?
So Microsoft now has a lot of tools that are available on Microsoft Docs that explain all the tools that are available by version. So if you're on really any version from 2009 until now, Microsoft has documentation for the various cleanup tools, what they do, how they work. And there's a lot of just great documentation that you can use to see if this is maybe of value to you, maybe not. But they're fairly small articles that you can read in less than a minute to sort of get you started. And with these, you can find out, how to run particular processes. But where you want to really start with those processes is in a UAT or test environment. Again, you're sort of collecting your before state with your database, your tables, and then your specific legal entities, and really digging into some of those reports. So your transaction details should consume most of your space inside of your database. So these are your inventory transactions and your ledger transactions. Those should be your largest, because that's where you're doing most of your posting for stuff that will be there forever, and you want it to be there forever. Next, we've got sort of logging tables. Logging tables should be relatively small by comparison. What we'll typically see is that is not the case. If logging tables are consuming a lot of your space, that's a good place to start, because logging tables are just log tables. They provide information that was relevant at one point in time, but it ages out relatively quickly, and it's time to clean some of that stuff up. And like mentioned before, Microsoft has out-of-the-box tools to help with a lot of this stuff. And there's also tools available in the community. Those out-of-the-box tools from Microsoft ship. They're already there. You just got to go find them. And then for stuff that's available in the community, I've written a few to help end users clean up sort of their database and their AIF and batch tables, because those are relatively easy to just sort of ignore, because your database log is humming right along and you're not seeing any problem because nothing is broken. But before you know it, you've got maybe 100 gigabytes worth of database logs, and you've got to address those. Similar to retail functionality, there is retail is vastly different when you're going from AX 2012 to 365. So there's a lot of cleanup there for that you can do beforehand. And if you don't clean up, there's various specific areas inside retail that you don't clean up. The database upgrade process actually cleans up for you, but then you have to wait for it to do that cleanup while your database is upgrading. That's specific to R3, but there's a lot to go through when you really start diving into the details. So using the out-of-box tools from Microsoft can really sort of set you down a path to cleaning up your data in your database, and really trim things down to make your transition to the cloud all that much easier, faster, and cheaper.
Thanks for sharing those, Nathan. Connecting and leveraging connecting to organizations that have gone through a migration or are going through a migration, and learning from their experiences and leveraging the documents and resources can be very, very helpful to anyone going through this process. So I appreciate you calling those out. Today we heard about the importance of cleaning up your data, preferably before you start or have a migration on the horizon for your organization, and how being proactive in this cleanup can not only save you time and money, but ultimately makes that process go so much smoother. So thanks, Nathan. I really appreciate your time today and talking about data cleanup and what that can look like for an organization.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This has been Migration Minded. If you have migration questions, please join our Dynamics 365 migration community, where you can connect with experts like Nathan there. If you're not sure where to get started, as Nathan mentioned, we have a lot of great resources and content on the community site. There are also product forums where you can specifically ask questions about your migration with experts. One great resource is our standard migration assessment, which gives you a good look at both the functional and technical aspects of your current instance. So that's a great place to start if you're not sure where to with your migration or your data. So until next time, thanks so much for watching, and see you again soon.